spreads to 80 different cities across the United States. It's a pretty remarkable thing. From what I read about our next speaker, Mike Smith, he's actually one of the most amazing and humble guys. He's talked to hundreds of thousands, influenced hundreds of thousands of students, of entrepreneurs, of executives, guys that are young, guys that are old, gals that are young, gals that are old, and now he has come here to do the very same thing to you. Open mind, clap your hands loud for Mike Smith, please! Mike Smith!
That's Avril Lavigne's Skater Boy, for those of you that don't know right there. I got you. And so I just want to say I'm super hyped to be here. The couple of you that I've got to talk to, my favorite question that I always get asked, people love to ask me what I do, and that's like literally my least favorite question on the planet. And so I don't call myself an entrepreneur. I literally don't know how to spell it, sorry. Like I've never one time called myself that, so my bad. I've never actually printed off business cards. The closest thing I've ever got to a business card is one time I printed off 100,000 of my Snapchat code, like my Snap sticker, and I give that out. And every CEO I've ever handed my Snap code to, they're always like, what do I do with this? And I always just tell them, like, ask your kids, they'll tell you what's up. And so I don't have a job title, I don't have a career. When you do your taxes, you're supposed to write something down. So 5 years ago, I jokingly wrote professional teenager to see what the IRS in the United States would say back. They didn't say anything, so I've been calling myself a professional teenager ever since. And so what that means is you got a little bit about the roster of some of the nonprofit stuff that I do. I got a few for-profit businesses that I own and started with my friends as well. I currently live in Nebraska and LA part of the year. I also right now, I live in a tiny home, like HGTV tiny home. And I know a lot of people want to do this, I took an old ambulance and I flipped it into a tiny home. I've been 30,000 miles, no idea how many kilometers that is, but I've done 30,000 miles since September in this tiny home, traveling all across the United States. And so I host my own tour. They bus kids in from all over the different states or cities, and I get a chance to speak to young entrepreneurs and kids about how to do this stuff. And so for any of you kids sitting here who have no idea what you want to do or what you want to be when you grow up, I don't either. So I'm just like you. I should have an orange lanyard instead of a blue one. And so for me, here's what I want to talk about, and there's a clock, tight, thank you. All right, and so here's what I want to talk about. I want to tell you guys like how I started, and that's what I just want to call is like how you start, and then I'm starting this new brand called Find Your Grind, because I think that's like the biggest issue. So I just want to teach kids how to find their grind. And so for me, the way it happened was my first day in college, I squeaked into college. I barely graduated high school, squeaked into college. The only reason I got in was because I can play ball. I was a point guard. I got a full ride scholarship to play basketball. Basically, I go to school. My coach asked me what I want to study and what I want to major. And like a lot of you, I had no clue. So what I said was I wanted to get my degree and I wanted to help people. And my coach looked at me and said, if you want to help people, get in my truck. And my response was, my mom's warned me about people like you my whole entire life. I was like, I heard about this. And so, but that's your coach, so you get in that truck. So I hopped in this dude's truck. We drove 8 blocks from the arena that I played at. He parked his truck, said, get out and walk. I walked to this tall bridge in the top of downtown Omaha. He said, if you want to help people, he's like, start with them. And I looked over the railing of this bridge, and down there living underneath that bridge was tons of homeless people. My graduating class had 42 people in it. There's like hundreds of homeless people living under this bridge. I've been in college for a half an hour, and I'm looking at this dude like, what am I gonna do about that? And he's like, you said you were helping people. He's like, let's go. So we walk down a bridge, he points to a dirt path, says, you follow that to the end. He's like, you'll find what you're looking for. But then he was like, you're a man, you gotta do this on your own. He got in his truck and drove off. And so I was like, I love Coach, all right. And so I walked under the bridge, I put my hand out to the first homeless dude I saw. All I could come up with was, I'm Mike, I go to school right up the hill, how can I help? This guy told me his name, his story, where he was from, how he ended up homeless. He finally looks at me and he was like, you know what I need? And he just said he needed socks. And I didn't get it. I'm like, why do you want socks? He took off his boot, showed me his feet, and here's what I didn't realize. Homeless people, anybody sleeping outside, here's what happens. They get rained on, they get snowed on, their bag gets wet, their coats get wet, their shoes get wet, their socks get wet, everything they've got gets soaking wet, and they'll basically spend that entire day trying to go in and out of coffee shops to get dried, but they'll get kicked out because they don't smell great or they didn't buy anything. Then they go to hotel lobby or parking garage to parking garage, and basically what happens is their feet stay wet, and this dude's toenails had turned black, and the bottoms of his feet were starting to rot. It's called boot rot. Most homeless people suffer from this. And I'm looking at this dude's feet, and I'm thinking to myself, This guy just wants a pair of socks, y'all. Like, I'm looking at that thinking, like, we don't wear half the socks in our sock drawer today. We throw socks away when they don't match. And we got people dropping 20 bucks on one pair of socks because you think your little sock game's got to be so strong. And I'm looking at this like, I was like, I'll be right back. I walked up to campus. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any socks. The only thing I had going for me was the fact that I played sports in college. And when you play sports in college, you get free stuff. So I walked into our equipment room. I found a brand new box of Adidas tube socks for the girls volleyball team. But I was like, whatever, they're free, right? Like, I don't care. And so I walked off. Coach stops me halfway and he's like, where are you going? And I was like, helping people, man. Like, I got you. And so I walked back under that bridge and I just straight up made it rain tube socks on them that day. And these dudes, yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. But once, thank you, I appreciate that. But once I started talking with them, they started asking me questions like, can you get us food? And I was like, of course I can get food. And so I worked out a deal with our lunch ladies where I was like, we don't throw food away, guys. I was like, we don't need to waste food. I was like, I got some hungry people. I'm going to feed these people. Like, let's just not throw food away. So I literally just saved food. And here's the thing. I didn't do it once. I didn't do it twice. I didn't do it because it was going to look good on a resume. I didn't do it for a job application. 0 times, I promise you this, 0 times in my life did I sit in front of any human and tell them that I walked under a bridge for 4 straight years trying to help homeless people. I did it because a coach of mine in high school once told me, he said, helping people happens when nobody else is looking. And that got burned into my brain and I could not forget. You guys, not once in my life have I ever told anybody to get a job that I literally walked under a bridge for 4 straight years giving socks and food to homeless people. I just did it because it was the right thing to do. My senior year, I was fortunate enough to be a first-team All-American. I played in a national championship at our little division. I got a chance to go play basketball overseas after that. I worked at an orphanage during the day. I literally dropped out my senior year of college to go play basketball overseas. I am currently, to this day, still 12 credits shy of a college degree. The book I'm working on is called Oops, I Almost Graduated. And so we'll get there. I literally left school, went played basketball overseas, got back. I sat down one night, and like a lot of you, I just wanted to help people. I wanted to take my passion and use that to help people. And I wanted to create a skate park and make this positive place for kids to go. And the reason I picked skateboarding, the reason I picked art and graffiti is in the States, there are 1 million basketball courts. There's thousands of coaches, millions of people trying to help kids in football, basketball, baseball, track. I wanted to help kids who had a passion for skateboarding and the creative arts. That's what I wanted to help kids. So I sat down one night and I straight up Googled how to start a nonprofit. I printed off a checklist. I did everything that that checklist told me from the internet. I had no money. At that time, I was a social worker making $800 every 2 weeks. What's 800 plus 800? Somebody who's smarter than me. That's how much I made every 2 weeks, all right? Like, that was my paycheck. So what my friends and I did is I straight up Googled how to start a nonprofit. We tore down 2 abandoned barns, literally recycled all of that stuff. I built an indoor skate park. I put it in a mall. I couldn't even afford the $300 it takes to open a business checking account, so I had to borrow $300 from a friend of mine, and I have never paid him back because that is hilarious. And I straight up, I Googled how to start a nonprofit. We tore down 2 barns. I stole $300 from a friend, and I built the world's first ever nonprofit indoor skate park in a mall. I couldn't even afford the paint it takes to put on the walls. We were in between Sears and Radio Shack, and the mall told me I had to paint our walls. They couldn't be bare concrete. Couldn't even afford the paint. So I called every kid that I knew that had gotten in trouble for doing graffiti illegally and had community service hours. I called these kids and asked how much of those they had, and they were like, we got a lot of both. And I was like, that's what I'm talking about. And so I locked every one of those kids, locked them into the space at 9 p.m. on a Friday night, and I said, you got till 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. I need this thing to be covered, every inch of it. And I just left, and I said a little prayer and was like, we'll see what happens. And I got back. When I unlocked the doors, the place looked incredible. I opened up this little skate park, and the day I opened my doors, the crazy thing that happened is all these skate kids ran in, and they loved it. My community didn't get it. So many people are coming at me with questions like, well, what are your credentials? What best practice model are you following? Like, where are you getting your resources from? I literally got quoted in an interview. I was so over it. I got quoted in an interview, and somebody asked me about best practice, and I said, I want you to call me in 5 years. I'm going to show you what best practice is. I was like, I don't want to answer any more questions about best practice. And so I literally just created this space for kids. And at first, we couldn't make it. Like, it was super tough to do this. I didn't do fundraisers. I didn't even know you had to. Like all of a sudden, we just didn't have any money. And I was like, oh, I guess I got to go raise money. And so the first fundraiser that I ever did, I lived homeless under a bridge, and I said I wasn't coming out underneath that bridge until I raised $10,000. $10,000 seems like nothing. It took me 27 nights living homeless under a bridge, and the first night that I slept outside, it was negative 17 degrees. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it's really cold, all right? And so I lived under that bridge for a month. A couple days after that, I got done, and I realized that wasn't going to be enough. So I literally got home from work one day, went to go pick up my wife. She was my fiance at the time. Went to go pick her up. I looked at her, and I was like, hey, baby, I got this idea. This was a month before I got married. I was like, I'm leaving tomorrow with a bunch of the guys. We're going to drive all the way across the state of Nebraska. It's 430 miles. I was like, I'm actually going to skate on the highway from one end to the next to try to raise money for the Bay. That's what my warehouse is called. I was like, I'm going to try to raise money for the Bay. I should be back like 2 weeks before we get married. She looked at me and started crying and goes, why can't you be normal? And I was like this is no, like if you can't handle it, you got to get out now. And so I grabbed my skateboard and my friends. We drove 430 miles across the state of Nebraska. I put my skateboard on the pavement. I literally put my foot down. I skated 50, 60 miles a day on the highway. It'd be 100 degrees outside when we got out there, and I literally just pushed all the way across the state of Nebraska to raise money for this thing that I believed in. I've done that 3 times since then. It's called Skate the State. I've raised almost $100,000 just skating across the state of Nebraska. And from my warehouse, I literally used to just grab a backpack, and I would fill it full of socks, beanies, bottles of water, skate up and down the streets of my city just trying to give stuff to homeless people. And for the first year and a half, it was just me skating by myself giving stuff to homeless people. But because I own the skate park, all the skate kids started showing up. And one day I got to this street corner to go do what we coined skate for change. And all of a sudden I got like 40 high school and middle school skateboarders with backpacks full of their own stuff ready to go help homeless people. And I looked at these 40 skate kids and I started cracking up. Because there is no teacher, coach, cop, adult, administrator, or business professional who sees 40 high school and middle school skateboarders standing on a street corner with backpacks and thinks to themselves, look at these good kids about to do awesome things right now. Like, go get them, kids. I looked at these 40 kids like somebody already called the cops. We got to go right now. I was like, we got the helicopter, that's for us. Like, let's go. And we would skate through our city, and I have seen some of the funniest things on the planet. I rounded a corner one time with 40 of these little misfits behind me. This old lady walked out of a store. She looked at me, she looked at those 40 kids, and she straight up threw her walker and was like, it's a gang, and like turned and ran. And I was like, it's the fastest she's moved in 2 decades. It's a big deal. But she's fast, yeah. But what's even cooler than watching a 95-year-old sprinter is watching these kids. Like, I would watch these kids, and these kids don't have a lot. I'll watch these kids skate up to a homeless person, unzip their backpack, and these kids are giving out their food, their socks, their water, their stuff, and they're handing it to a homeless person. I can't count, you guys, how many times I've watched one of these teenagers give up their backpack because they thought somebody needed it more. I can't tell you how many times I've watched one of these kids take off their shoes, give it to a homeless person, and they got to skate back barefoot, and I know that kid doesn't have another pair of shoes waiting for him when he gets home, so I got to hook him up with a pair from my skate shop. Skate for Change 5 years ago was 40 of us in Lincoln, Nebraska. Today, Skate for Change actually has over 125 global chapters around the world. We give out over 1 million pair of socks. It's in places and countries I've never been to. Part of my job today is I get to fly all over the planet, and I get to skate around with these middle school, high school, and college-age kids, giving back in their communities, not because they have to, but because